My name is Rachel, and today we're going to be discussing The Quiet Zone, Unraveling the Mystery of a Town Suspended in Silence by Stephen Kurczy. So, I decided to pick this book up because I heard it mentioned on a podcast from Book Riot, and it sounded really interesting. The premise of this is a town in the Appalachian area that is supposedly suspended in silence because of a very unique telescope that is in the area. So they need radio silence. So no Wi-Fi, no cell phones. Sometimes you're not even allowed to use your microwave. So that sounded very interesting to me. So I decided to pick this one for one of our book club picks in my personal book club. We're trying to rotate fiction and nonfiction, and this sounded like a very interesting nonfiction. And it was really not what I expected in both probably a good and not so good way. So first of all, we do follow the author's first-hand account of traveling to this town and experiencing all of this himself. So we are getting that first-hand account, but he does a lot of interviews, so you're hearing the information from other people through him. It's just interesting. I think it does a lot of things. It shows what a community in the Appalachian area would really be like. I think a lot of us who aren't from that area have a very distinct picture in our mind of what that would look like, and I think this really gives a better realistic picture. I think going in, the idea that they don't have Wi-Fi, cell phones, etc. probably exacerbates how people are viewing the people who live in these mountains. And this book was wild. That's what I'm going to say first, because I'm expecting just to see how the people in this community live in this current day and age without Wi-Fi, without cell phones, without some of the things that all of us use very, very much in our daily lives. And that is just a small portion of what we ended up getting. Well, first of all, you need to know that it's not all the time that they're not allowed to use these things. They can apply to have different things. They can use Ethernet, which obviously is not optimal, but it does give them connections to the internet. So it's not like there's no internet in the town. And then as Stephen keeps going back to visit this community, the technology is spreading. It's becoming harder and harder to keep the radio silence requirement for this telescope. And that's essentially why they weren't allowed to use all of the devices in the first place. They have this very powerful telescope stationed in the middle of this town that is used to try to detect any type of communication from other places in the universe. And for that, they need to have just complete radio silence to get the best reading. So everything around this town is in a national radio quiet zone, which is why they're not allowed to have Wi-Fi, etc. So you do see more and more people getting Wi-Fi, even though it's really not allowed. And you do see more people getting cell phones, even though it's not allowed. So in some way, I almost feel a little disappointed that we didn't get to see how they actually lived without these things, because they're not really living without these things. But there's so much else going on in this town that it's just absolutely insane. So the National Radio Quiet Zone is just a small part of what this book is about. He writes about so many things going on in this town, including a neo-Nazi camp that's stationed in this town that we see in varying states of disarray throughout the book. He talks about a couple of murders that occurred in this area that actually is leading me to read another book in the future. We talk about a possible sex cult. We talk about the idea of people who believe that they are sensitive to electronics, and that causes them to be unhealthy. So they're moving to this area in the hopes that with the lesser use of cell phones and lighting and different electronic things that they'll feel better. There's just so much in this book. So I would recommend you going into it with more of an open mind than I did. Like I said, I felt a little bit let down that the main focus was not how these people live without these things. But it's really more of a look at the people who live in this town and all the craziness that goes in. And I would say that the secondary focus is really on the neo-Nazi group in the town. We hear about the original man who moved into the town and leading this prominent hate group right out of their backyard. He moved into this area because it was relatively quiet. not a lot of radio signals for like tracking purposes, and there was just a lot of open natural space for this group to accumulate on. We got to hear how this group impacted the community and made impacts nationally, and the guy who moved there and started this compound had passed away before our author visited, but he was able to go and speak with several of the people who were still living on the compound, which really wasn't many, and by the end of the book we're seeing a very, very dwindling numbers in this area. So I would say that's one of the major premises of the book, this hate group that just seemed to be embedded in the community, and it was interesting, I guess, to read about it, but I was not expecting that to be such a focus. There was several chapters dedicated to different topics that came out of the area. So for instance, there are some references to Patch Adams, the doctor that dressed up like a clown, and we've all seen references to the movie that Robin Williams was in, but we get a very, very different perspective of the real Patch Adams in this book. Nearby this town with radio silence is where Patch Adams was supposed to be building his free care facility for people in Appalachia, and as of the writing of this book, it still does not exist. So I think that was kind of an interesting element. Like I said, we also follow a true crime element where 3 people were murdered on their way to a rainbow convention. The book that I actually already had on my radar, I didn't realize would be tied in with this book, and that is The Third Rainbow Girl. So I'm hoping to read that soon to get more information on that element, because it wasn't a huge part of the book, but it was mentioned. We also get to see some details about 2 other murders / killings that happened. It's a debate whether one of the men killed the other one and then killed himself, or if they both were murdered. So we got to follow people looking into that a little bit in a personal element, not as a police element, but our author does go down into this very creepy cave where one of the men was found, and this book is just, I feel like, so full of tangents. So my one criticism would be that it did kind of seem all over the place. I went in expecting a much more focused look at the town surviving without all of the modern day technology that most of us use. And what we got was very much an investigation of this hate group called the National Alliance, and then all these random happenings that happen in this area. I mean, we talk about a possible sex cult. We talk about murders. We talk about, obviously, neo-Nazi and hate. We talk about people's opinions about if they can be told that they can and can't use Wi-Fi, and the electrosensitives were another very popular theme. And again, these are the people who believe that they are becoming sick because of the use of technology. And as of the writing of this book, this has not been accepted as an actual disease by the CDC and doctors in general. But these people believe that they do get sick. And I think they make a case for why some of them could possibly be, and some of them might be more doing it for other reasons. Because you do see them, while they're saying it makes them sick, also using these things. So it's an interesting idea. So definitely the main story is just the town and all the people that come there, all the people that experience this national quiet zone area, some of the science behind why that would be important to maintain. And yeah, I think it was very interesting. I learned a lot from this book, but like I said, don't go into it expecting just to focus on the town and their usage or non-usage of technology, but be more prepared to learn about all of the characters in this town, some of the history, crazy or otherwise, of this town, and really kind of feel like you're visiting the town with the author. So I would recommend reading this book if it sounds at all interesting to you, especially going in with a little bit of a different perspective. And even though I've said the main focus wasn't the technology used there, it did overall make me consider my use of technology and if I would be able to give up my Wi-Fi access and my phone and even my microwave. Like, can I live without these things? So I think this would be interesting. I think this also would be a good segue into reading books about about digital minimalism and maybe trying to make sure that you are the one using all of your devices instead of the other way around, especially in regards to things like social media. I would definitely want to give trigger warnings though for racism, neo-Nazism, suicide, murder, death, and chronic illness. And a new thing I'm trying to do this year is to really pick a song or two that I think of while I'm reading the book. So I found 3 for this book. The first one was Something to Believe In by Young the Giant. Next was Somewhere Only We Know by Keane. And the last one was Welcome to Paradise by Green Day. Because all of these made me think of kind of being in this strange location that isn't really well known and might be marketed as something that it's not. So yeah, those were my songs that I thought of throughout it. And again, I would recommend this if this sounds at all interesting. Let me know what you think down below if you've read it or if you're planning to read it. I'd love to hear. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye!